Okay, there we go. So would you like to introduce yourself and the workshop? I'll leave it to you. Welcome, everyone.
Well, right. Thanks, Ray. Thank you so much. First of all, just want to say deep gratitude and thank you to my sister Charmaine. Absolute amazing woman. Introduced me to IFS, what was it, 3 years ago? So it's something that I'm very familiar with and have been using for a long time. So yeah, awesome work. Thank you so much. So yes, everybody, my name's Neil. And today I'm going to be offering some information around what I call Futureproof your Wellbeing. And in short, I've been working with the human body for, well, body, mind, being, etc., for about 17 years. And I started in sports science, training elite athletes and working with international athletes and lecturing at a university around sports science, and basically worked all my way through to pain management and working at a place previously called City Therapy, which is where Charmaine and I met in Manchester. And then on the last sort of, I've kind of worn different hats, everything from, breath coach to sound therapist, to, you name it. Basically, I just call myself a therapist and coach, really. But the last 10 months, I've been really delving deep into a gentleman's work who Charmaine actually spoke about, called Stephen Porges, with his polyvagal theory. I'm going to touch a tiny bit on that today. But so basically looking into the science of safety and connection. I want to talk a bit about connection today. And so today is very much about, I'd say, I don't know, getting basically those last sort of 17 years worth of work, condensing it all and going, what are a bunch of tools that I can share that can help you basically future-proof your well-being? And by that, I mean tools that you can employ in your life today, tools that you have within you already. And these tools that we can use to deal with what I call the two fundamental, let's not try to be negative, but the two fundamental issues we are facing and challenged as a society based on what I personally see. So loads to get through. So I'm going to start whizzing through this pretty quickly, but we're going to talk about three primary areas, and that's connection, elevation, and expansion. Okay, so connect, elevate, expand is the way I like to look at things. When I talk about connect, for me, connect is looking at, I've got my camera's just a little bit above where I am, so just in case you think I'm kind of up and downing, it just makes it a bit clearer, the image. So long story short, when we're looking at connection, for me, it's about connecting, first of all, to our reality, to where we actually are, what's actually going on, and then connecting to ourselves. Okay, so when I talk about connecting to reality, the two main issues that I'm finding with clients are stress and disconnection in general. Now, we know stress, whether you're looking at information from the World Health Organization as being like the 21st century's health epidemic. We know that through research, about 80 to 90% of doctors' visits are all based around stress. Unfortunately, when we look at the deeper into the research, and I put my hand up, I'm in the same boat, and I'm sure some of us can all resonate with this. We've all experienced stress at some stage. But the research shows us that like 75% of the population have been overwhelmed by stress. Of that 75% that have been overwhelmed by stress, there's been 32% who had suicidal feelings. Out of that 75%, again, 46% have had overeating issues because of that. And out of that 75%, again, 30% have reverted to or resulted to drinking alcohol, and 16% to increasing smoking. So that little bit of stress, whether it's internal stress, external stress, etc., that linking into the parts, linking into previous trauma, linking into previous life experiences, have those firefighters come along, i.e. smoking, i.e. drinking, etc., okay, i.e. eating as well, and can come in many different forms. Now, with that, the other research in that, which I found really interesting, and you can find this all on mentalhealth.org, I believe it is that out of 75% of the population of adults that were checked that reported being overwhelmed by stress, if you look at the age group of 18 to 24, that number bumps up to 83%. So what we're looking at basically is the younger the population gets, the more stressed they are. And that's from a variety of reasons. It's abundant everywhere. And so with stress, we've got the physical aspect of it. Okay, so we know physically what happens with stress. We have elevated heart rates, we have blood pressure issues, we have, we have, I don't want to go into the cognitive too much, but in the clinic, what I typically find is people come in with lower back pain. They come in with neck and shoulder pain from being tight, because what our body does is our body just absorbs. And so any stress and tension it finds externally or internally, our body goes whoop and holds onto it. Or in other words, it could be looking at basically protecting parts or protecting exiles, or basically pushing things down into corners. So what can basically be happening there is we end up holding on to a lot of stress and tension. So a lot of the work that I do, although it is physical, it could be acupuncture, it could be myofascial release, it could be trigger point therapy, it's all based on emotional trauma, emotional issues. And a lot of that comes from the stress that we are facing today. And you've also got the psychological aspect that I'm sure we're all aware of. Stress basically starts to play on things like anxiety, like depression, like we've got symptoms like PTSD. It's huge and it's abundant, and then that flows onto the behavioral side as well. So, I'm sure we're all aware stress is something that we are dealing with, but it's something that we don't have to deal with in the way we are. So we're typically living in a stressed out environment, internally and externally, and we're trying to plug it with a whole bunch of well-being tools and toys, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. Instead of going down to the core issues and looking at how we can actually, through a variety of things, which I call the Wholesome Seven, literally dissolve those stress patterns and take us out of this constant fight or flight and shift us into the more connection and the social interaction system, which Stephen Porges talks about, where we live more from the heart, or the nervous system connection, or the vagal nerve that connects us with heart, throat, middle ear, face, and eyes, which is the first primary connection we have with our parents or guardians or mother. That's the first little connection that we typically have. And where does it come out of? Where does the expression come out of? It comes out of the face. So that's the conscious side. The unconscious side of stress now is things like, heart disease, asthma, diabetes, obesity. We talked about depression and anxiety, constant headaches, IBS. All of this is related to stress. Dr. Rangan Chatterjee did an amazing study, and it was actually broadcast as a TV program where we went and lived with people for 8 weeks and showed just by changing things like the diet ever so slightly, you can reverse things like diabetes. Okay, we know with using different breathing techniques, we can actually reverse different like sleep apnea and things like that. So there's even breathing's related to diabetes. So anyway, stress, huge. Yeah, we're all going through it, but let's look at some ways that we can elevate our tools to get out of that stress state. Okay. Now, the other one I just want to address briefly is disconnection. All right. And for me, in my healing journey over the last 20 years of really doing self-development and trying to understand things and basically find my way in this crazy thing we called the 3D world, disconnection was a big one for me. And I went through a process of really disconnecting myself, not only just from the external world, but from my internal world myself. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's just talk through a couple of simple examples. I suppose let's just define stress first of all. So stress basically is the process of being isolated or disconnected. Okay? And we are the most connected but disconnected society that's ever existed. Okay, and you only have to look at us and how we use our phones. Okay, and again, I'll put my hand up. Who here has been in a room with their friends and family, and you put your head up, and what you notice is you've been on the screen having a look at whatever you found was the most important, and you look up, and everybody else in the room's on their phones as well. So you might have gone to a party, and it's the same thing. Everybody's come together to connect, but then you've disconnected by basically taking your attention elsewhere. Okay, so that's common. We've also got the multitasking side of things. I had a friend of mine actually say to me a couple of days ago, I should stop putting on YouTube videos while I'm driving, doing long distance drives. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's not for me to make that kind of judgment, but at the same stage, that's for them. So that's cool. But what I'm getting at is that more often than not, when we are trying to do one thing, we're also trying to multitask and do another. So that takes that moment of connection, whether it's in communication with somebody, out of the picture, because we're not able to really tap into that heart, tap into that presence, tap into that direct, beautiful communication because the mind has gone, oh, what's the football score? Oh, wonder what they're doing. Oh, what time is my yoga class, etc. Okay, it's the multitasking aspect. So again, that controls our attention, and typically we're trying to control the outcome. Another funny one, which I have experienced actually last week, a friend of mine was having a chat with him on Skype, and yes, basically his phone rang, and the first thing he said, he's like, why the hell are you calling me? Now, last time I checked, the reason we had phones was so that people could call each other. And so, yeah, it's just this crazy dynamic of being super connected but disconnected. Social media comes into that as well. And in terms of the disconnection there, for me, it's very much about the editing who you are. You know, I do it as well. And again, I'm all about owning up to things. You put things out on social media, then what do? You edit it because you don't feel like that, or you express something and then you go, oh, somebody might take it a little bit of a different way, or I'm only going to put this image up because it's more reflective of what I'm about. But we're literally editing ourselves, which in turn, in my understanding and the way I'm putting it all together, is disconnecting us from our core self, from who we actually are, or we have these traumas that we're unable to express ourselves through, okay, which is a whole different kettle of fish completely. But basically, through things like social media, we are editing ourselves and the way we are. Okay, and now comes to the main one, which I love to talk about, and when it comes to disconnection, and pretty much the reason we're all here. And the reason we're all here at this beautiful festival, Envirolution, which would have been Envirolution, where we could have, spent some time together outdoors in nature. But, so be it. This is us. And it is the disconnection from nature. We are so disconnected from nature. I know personally, I've been on a huge journey trying to really spend as much time connecting in nature as possible. And you only have to look at, the damage we've caused, all this work that we're standing up for with regards to climate change, with regards to Extinction Rebellion, all sorts. We've literally disconnected from our environment. We've basically just started to, in my interpretations, basically steal from Mother Earth without giving back. So again, we've disconnected from Mother Earth, and we've also forgot that we are all one. We are from Mother Earth. We are the same, the same thing. We've just basically, if you like, mutated or evolved in different ways. And so that's complete disconnected. That's a complete disconnection altogether. And so again, for me, I'm trying to do my best to reconnect. Now, one of the funny things is when it comes to well-being is that nature now is being prescribed, a Western term, if you will, is now prescribed as a form of well-being. So the Japanese have known about this for eons, really. It's called Shinrin Yoku. So apologies for my pronunciation. But in short, spending time in nature is a form of therapy, a form of healing, a form of elevating your well-being. It helps, research shows it helps lessen pain. It helps lower our stress. It helps us to cognitively think better. It helps us to be happier as well. And unfortunately, with the well-being world, a lot of it has stepped away from the fun aspect and the enjoyment of it to being very much a plaster and very much a, go and spend time in nature because it's going to make you feel better, rather than being connected to nature and naturally wanting to spend time in there in whichever form, or even having plants around the house because it's part of you, and because it's, let's be honest, it feels good. So we've got those two different aspects. Just want to acknowledge one thing is, with stress, there is always the positive side of stress as well, which is called eustress. All right, and that's when it comes to things like this, where I was kind of trying to get a few things ready, and just that little elevation of stress of, oh, I've got a time limit here, that can help with things like motivation and focus and things like that. So I just want to acknowledge that, so we don't think that I'm completely ignoring that. So talking about connecting to reality, the other aspect of what's actually going on, and the biological aspect is, like I've said before, we're not spending enough time, typically from what I'm seeing, in our connection state. We are, through traumas and through our environmental habits and how we're living, we're spending time more in that fight or flight response, especially if we're in big cities. I spent about 5, nearly 6 years in London, which was very, very challenging. And you see it everywhere. Okay. And with what I found with London, I moved to London 10 years ago, and I just come from New Zealand at the time, which was, I was in New Zealand for just over 10 years. And I arrived in London, and my role there was to try and get a job in the Premier League. So I had to chat with some of the big clubs and all sorts, and it didn't really work out. And so I went into teaching people how to be PTs and all sorts, and just working out how to make a living. Now, the stress of living in that city is immense. If anybody's lived in London or spent a lot of time in London, you will know exactly what I mean. But more than that, I noticed at that time, the sports in the wellbeing world was pretty small. In terms of the sports, okay, it was quite big, but in terms of the wellbeing world, it was pretty small. 10 years ago, yoga was just starting to step out of things. Sound healing was pretty much non-existent. Breath work was non-existent. All these other beautiful tools and techniques from qigong and all sorts, art therapy, music therapy, etc., were pretty much non-existent. So now it's London especially is a huge hotbed of there's a yoga studio everywhere. There's about 15 different types of yoga there. There's about 10 different types of breath work there. There's sound healers and sound therapists everywhere, and which is amazing. But when I did some work in Albania last year, I organize wellness programs for festivals. We went over there, we did some work, and they really couldn't understand why we were doing sound journeys and why we were doing yoga. And one of the things that really clicked to me is the fact that it makes me think, and this is my interpretation, is that the stress levels are so high in places like London that you have to bombard ourselves with well-being practices to lower that stress. And so when I was in Albania, people didn't even know what yoga and didn't know what sound meditations were, because the environment they were living in was such a balanced, this was out near the coast and it was wonderful. It's such a balanced environment where life is very slow and nice and relaxed. And so just want to acknowledge that big expansion of well-being, and that, it's a really, really positive thing. But for all these bells and whistles, we can do this ourselves. Okay, so I want to move more into, we talked about connecting to our reality, connecting to ourselves really is the next stage for me. And I'm just going to pull something up here just to keep my brain ticking along. And like Charmaine said, using mindfulness and meditation, and I just want to honor this first of all, to connect inwardly can be a challenge based on our traumas. It took me 7 years to get my head around meditation because I was doing it all incorrectly, and I was then watching my parts come up and then argue with myself, and it was a back and forth for ages until I worked out a type of meditation that worked for me. But when I talk about connection to me, I like to simplify it down to being present with myself, okay, being honest. So yeah, being present with myself, being honest with myself, and the reason why. And I'll just go into these a little bit. So being present with myself starts for me and with my clients by having a cup of tea. Find yourself 20 minutes a day to go and have a cup of tea by yourself and just sit and enjoy your own company. And if you feel the call, and if you would like to, you can ask yourself, how am I feeling today? How do I physically feel? How do I mentally feel? How do I emotionally feel? Just checking in with how we actually feel. And by starting with a cup of tea, for me, there's no pressure. You're just having a cup of tea and enjoying time for you, where you're not distracted by the outside world. So first part in connection is have a cup of tea if you can, or a cup of coffee, whatever works for you, but just take some time for you. Honesty is a big one for me, and for some of the clients I'm working with now, it's been a bit of a rude awakening. I'm all about honesty. Where are you at the moment? Not where you're at in the social media world and what you're portraying yourself as, but where am I at? And I'm going to go into the wholesome 7, which I briefly touched on before, and it's about being honest within those, which are, sleep, and there's quite a few others. But being honest with yourself, where you can sit back and you can go, yeah, I'm being 100% honest with me, right? Next one, after spending some time with yourself, being present with yourself, being honest with yourself, is finding out why. Why do we feel it's important to be healthy, or to offer yourselves well-being practices? Why is it important to eat better? What's your reason for wanting to feel better? What's your reason for wanting to future-proof your well-being? What is the reason why? So for me, once I can understand the reason why, it gives you an idea of, okay, so is that something I'm looking to attain, or is that something I'm just looking to give myself as a bit of a backbone of I'm doing this because I want to walk up the stairs and not feel puffed, or whatever it may be. But what's the why? So tools and techniques in this world include things like meditation and mindfulness, which you touched on before. I didn't realize, but there are hundreds of thousands of different types of meditation. The one that worked for me was contemplation meditation, which was paired with gratitude meditation. So that was amazing. But breath work, and we're going to talk about the breath in a bit, and awareness are big ones for me as well. So those tools in themselves can offer a bit of space to connect. So he says, after connection, elevation. What are we elevating? Let's elevate the tools and techniques that you've already got. Okay, what are those tools and techniques that you've already got? Well, these are what I call the wholesome 7. Well, this is my interpretation over years of work. And the wholesome 7 for me, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm just going to see if I can share my screen actually, because I think it might be a little bit more helpful here. Okay, so if Ray's there, Ray, could you enable me to share my screen, please?
Sorry, what was that, Neil?
Could you just enable, it says the host is disabled participant screen sharing. Would you be able to enable that so I can share the screen, please?
Okay, let me have a look now.
Cool. So yeah, so a big thing for me is what I call the wholesome 7. And the wholesome 7 is 7 different areas that I feel if we pay a little bit of attention to, what we can do is then basically enable us to step into a place where, there we go, brilliant, let's pull that up, share that there, and let's pull this here. Oh, what have we got going there? Sorry, team, technology, there we go, that's the button I'm looking for there, it's called present. Brilliant, okay. So I hope everybody can see that. So the wholesome 7 for me is if we breathe well, or sorry, if we sleep well, if we breathe well, we move well, we think well, we nourish ourselves well, we relax well, and we connect well, that's all we need to worry about, okay? Now, it sounds like a lot, but realistically it's not. It's very simple. And at the last bit of this chat, we'll go through how to, which is the expand part, how to piece that all together. So what tools can we use when it comes to sleep? Okay, so things like a digital detox and having a routine and getting up and starting again. And so what are these? So if possible, look at things like an hour before you go to sleep, just putting your phone away or putting it in another room, or maybe not using it as your alarm, giving yourself that break from the digital world, because with most phones, we've got, blue light, etc., that keeps the mind awake. But having that digital space. Also, along with that comes in routine. So what we normally do at home is we've only got like one lamp that's on in the lounge at any time. And that just enables us to keep the light nice and low. By having that light nice and low, we're actually able to basically subconsciously allow ourselves to drop into more of a relaxed state where you're not stimulated, your nervous system's not stimulated by the light. So with that routine as well, I typically have a set time I go to bed and a set time you wake up. That's not, for some people, that's not possible. So I would say, out of all things, try and find a time that you can kind of stick to when it comes to waking up. That's the most important out of all of those. In terms of getting up and starting again, for those of you who've been similar and you've lied in bed and you're marinating, and by marinating I mean watching the paint dry and just rolling side to side, I'd say if you can't sleep for 20 to 25 minutes, or 25 minutes to half an hour, depending on how long it takes you, get up and start again. Start your breathing practice, your sleeping routine all over again. Because 9 times out of 10, and what the research shows us, is that basically you're just going to keep going and going and going until all of a sudden you would like to fall asleep. You kind of get to a stage where almost you accidentally fall asleep, if you know what I mean. And I'm sure you've all, I know I've been through it numerous times, so I'm sure you can empathize with that. But yes, get up and start again. Okay, so just 3 simple things with regards to sleep. So the next big one for me is, and let's get out of this one. Where is it? How do we get back out? There we go. There we go. Is the breath. Right. The breath is an amazing tool, and there's so many amazing practitioners out there and breath coaches offering breathing techniques. Why they're so important? Well, because breathing enables us to actually tap directly into our nervous system, all right, and directly regulate how we're actually feeling. So for me, it's engaging the diaphragm. How do we do that? Just breathing through your nose. Just by breathing through your nose, you're able to actually directly activate the diaphragm. So once you're activating the diaphragm, it enables you to fill up all three lobes of your lungs, and all three lobes of your lungs then are going to mean more oxygen, more energy, and more balanced and better well-being. If possible, try and consciously breathe long and slow. With the nature of stress, we typically breathe from the top, and so from the first lobe of the lungs. And by breathing from the first lobe of the lungs, we're typically hyperventilating. Okay. So if we can, long, slow breaths. And another tool there is extended exhales. And this is a beautiful tool you can use to really settle the nervous system. Okay. And that is breathing in for 4 seconds. So in, 2, 3, 4, and then out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you're basically going to cycle through those, and that is going to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is going to allow us to then get to a stage where we're actually able to lower our, as you drop into more parasympathetic, more into a rest and repair and restorative state. So movement, okay, and I'm all about movement, really, and the beauty of it is we can just build it into our daily routine. And anything to do with, for me, with movement with my clients, is see if you can build it into your daily routine. If if you're standing and you're brushing your teeth, why not see if you can do a stretch your calf at the same time? If you've got a house and you're up and down the stairs, why not go up and down the stairs one more time? If you are, when we get back to normality, if you do catch the train, or even better, if you catch the bus, stop a bus stop early. Probably don't stop a train stop early, because that might be a bit of a hike, but just try and build movement into our daily routine. If I was going to say ideally, then 10-minute stretches every day, 20-minute bit of exercise. But for me, it's about the two lower parts, and the two lower points, are find your fun. What's fun for you? Could be cycling, could be playing badminton, could be anything. What do you enjoy doing? And bringing that in. And another great way to look at things is offering yourself the challenge or the task to do more than you did the day before. So if you went up and down the stairs twice yesterday, why not try 2.5 times by going up and then coming halfway down, or 3 times, just challenging yourself a little bit more. So thinking, all right, this is where a little bit of Charmaine's work around IFS is comes in. And a little bit of work within NLP, that I studied NLP years and years ago. And one of the best tools that I actually came across was reframing. So first of all, I'd like to say to most clients is get a gratitude journal, all right? And then every morning, just basically jot down 3 things you're grateful for in the last 24 hours. What are 3 things you're grateful for in your life in the last 24 hours? Could be a cup of tea that you made, could be a conversation you had, could be anything. But just by acknowledging that gratitude, it sets off a cascade of hormones and chemicals, loads of feel-good hormones. It reframes the whole day and basically embodies, it offers the space, to embody this warmth and this connection to yourself. And the beauty of it is, as well, is if you do start a gratitude journal, even those days when you're having that a little bit wobbly and you're not feeling the best, what you can also do is then you can literally go back to that journal and reread one of those, or 2 or 3 of those points that you're grateful for. I've got a friend who has a jar. She's got a massive jar. She writes down what she's grateful for and puts it in the jar. If ever she's not feeling the best, she'll reach into that jar and pull out one of those sheets, one of those little bits of paper, just to help get her back on track. Okay. So we talked about mindfulness before and presence. And so one of my favorite tools with mindfulness, apart from the breath, is walking. And what I mean by this is when you go walking, especially in a park, literally just listen to the sound of your shoes on the gravel or on the bark or whatever you're walking on. Just being mindful of what that sound is, and then you can extend that to what that feels like in your feet, then what that feels like in your ankles and your legs, what that feels like carrying yourself. It's bringing your awareness to the present moment. Okay. I touched on reframing. Reframing is a big one for me. Nelson Mandela had a beautiful quote, and if I can remember it, it was along the lines of, there's no such thing as a mistake, it's always a learning opportunity. So for me, when I work with clients, I firstly say to people is that, and like I've said to you guys before, is that a lot of this information I know is because it's been shared with me, and hence I'm sharing it out. And all of these opportunities, especially with clients, they're opportunities where there's the clients there, but they're teaching me as much as I'm teaching them. So it's an opportunity for me to learn while I'm helping any way possible. So every opportunity is an opportunity to learn, which is the way I like to see things. So the next pillar in the world of the Wholesome Seven is nourishment. Now, yes, nutrition is a whole nother world. I spent over 2 years studying sports nutrition, and still to this day, I know a small bit, but not very much. But the things I do know that do help and have been proven to help before are things like making sure we're hydrated enough. We're mostly water, between 45 and up to 80% in different areas of the body. But the general rule of having about 250 ml cups of water a day is a nice standard. So trying to have over 2 liters of water a day. Just be aware that if you're drinking loads of water and you are having tea or coffee, they are diuretics. So you will pee them out. So yeah, you urinate a lot more. So it's a matter of just trying to balance that throughout the day. I'm all about one ingredient foods if possible. So trying to eat as much single ingredient foods as you can. But my big one that I share with all clients is that if you can't understand the label or what's in it, then don't buy it. So many of our foods are processed and they've got all sorts like xanthan gum and E55 and XWZY, all sorts. If I can't understand what's in that, then why do I want to put it into my body? That's a question, I invite you to ask. Yes, there's always going to be, I'm never one of these people who it's black and white, but there's always going to be elements of, well, I'm not really sure what that is. But if possible, try and see if you can really focus on and eating food that you know what's in it. Okay, relaxation is the next one, the sixth one. This is what I find that for myself was the biggest learning point. Okay, is I would say, yeah, I'm relaxing, but my relaxing is digesting podcasts and digesting, and I have my notebook going and digesting talks and TED Talks and all sorts of stuff. But then I realized that was actually me working and re-educating myself. So for me, it comes back to what I mentioned before and having that cup of tea. Offering yourself 20 minutes to have a cup of tea and just sit with yourself, a place where you won't be disturbed, where you can just relax and you can just go inwards and just enjoy your own personal company without having 1,000,001 things going on in the world and having to wonder, or what's for dinner, or what do I need to do, or where do I need to be. Taking that time for you to just settle and just enjoy your own company. Music's a big one for me. As a trained sound therapist, I've looked at it from a healing perspective and from a music therapy perspective. If music it's not, I'll be 100% honest, there's a lot of people who don't really resonate with music, but I would say if it does resonate with you, it's a beautiful way to allow yourself to connect again with yourself. I haven't put reading in there, but reading again is another way to relax, as long as you're not reading stuff that's like horror movies or whatever, because naturally your internal world is going to kick off again. I did a chat on self-compassion about 4 weeks ago for Mental Health Awareness Week. I think self-compassion is one of our superpowers. And by that, I mean, with self-compassion, you acknowledge that you're not feeling the greatest. You offer the understanding that everybody goes through this moment at some time and we're all in this together. And then offering yourself that kindness as well. Self-compassion is a really beautiful tool that we can offer ourselves if we choose. And so for me, when it comes to that cup of tea, I always bring self-compassion in. And if I feel like, oh, I've got to go and do something, it's like, yeah, I understand that you feel you need to get somewhere and be somewhere. You know, we all feel rushed, but at the same stage, you know, I can honor that. We all go through it. Let's just be kind and just take this moment for me. And then slow down. Slow down. So, you know, I typically talk fast. This is just how I've grown up, from growing up in South Africa and New Zealand and all sorts. We're a go bunch, really. Um, but slowing down really is a beautiful tool to enable and offer space to really connect again with yourself, which is what I'd like to talk about next. As what I would say is the fundamental, one of the most important aspects of the wholesome seven, as I call it. And it's connecting not just to yourself, but connecting to nature and the community as well. So, you know, we understand and how important nature is. I know for myself, I've had clients who haven't even thought about nature before, but since we've been in lockdown, they're like, oh, I just miss being able to sit in a park. I just miss being able to, you know, spend some time outdoors. And obviously the weather's been beautiful as well, you know. And then not only that, we've got this beautiful festival, which would be amazing to be able to connect with everybody and connect with you all in 3D in nature. And obviously we're celebrating nature as well with the Natureless Festival. So taking time to connect with nature, I feel is you know, it's paramount to living a healthy life. Not only that, is connecting with your community. And one thing that really struck me with one of my teachers she taught me that you are the result of your community. You know, yes, you can look at the community being the lineage of, you know, my ancestors and my elders, but also you could look at it in terms of the nurture in how I've grown up, in what shaped my worldview, what shaped how I think, feel, and act. So we are a product of our community. So why not spend more time reconnecting with the community? You know, I know for myself, again, I can only talk from my experiences, but as soon as COVID started and we had to spend more time in lockdown, I straight away started reaching out to as many friends as possible, because I felt that urge of, I haven't spoke to anybody in New Zealand for ages. Right, let's talk to them. I haven't spoke to my friends and family in South Africa. I haven't spoke. So just reaching out to that community, and I know full well, it made me feel absolutely amazing to reconnect again. So that leads me on to the next one, which is, you know, reach out to family and friends, you know, and without sounding too obvious, you know, we're all one. We really are. And, you know, especially in these times, a lot of us are all coming together in solidarity, and we really are. And, you know, the reason why that feels good is because we are all from the same place. We all share the same rough DNA, if you will. We share the same general structure, but somehow we've decided to separate those different parts. But more than that, if we strip it back to the fundamental, we're all one, and the more time we spend connecting with each other, the healthier we will be, because we naturally have the ability to soothe our nervous systems, to connect and communicate. And I know through working with clients is that we typically, and for myself, strive that, and we seek that individual connection and group connection with people. So with that, let's have a look. We've talked about, you know, connection in terms of connecting in reality of where we're actually at, you know, the issues with disconnection and stress, with what's actually going on in the world, in relation to the well-being world, how we can connect with ourselves and connect with me, how we can elevate our well-being by just looking at those 7 different areas, the wholesome 7, I call them. Again, these are small snippets. You know, all those areas are you know, subject matters in themselves. But the next thing is, how do we expand then into this new state of well-being? And for me, when we talk about expanding into this new state of well-being, it comes back to a fundamental thing of being honest. Where are we at? What's the next stage? Where are we going to? Being kind, you know, not expecting too much from ourselves, and also taking small steps. So yeah, being honest, being kind, and taking small steps to doing things, the easiest way. So if I was going to put this into a general overview of how you can incorporate like the wholesome 7 in a full sort of day, without going, well, I've got to concentrate on that, I've got to concentrate on that, I've got to concentrate on that. It's the simple things. So for me, it'll be, let's say, starting the night before. So what you might decide to do, or let's say I'll talk from my perspective, what I might decide to do is set my routine where I put my cell phone aside at least an hour before I go to sleep, and I turn down the lights in the house so they're nice and low an hour before I go to sleep, to just help me shift into a sleeping state a lot quicker. Right? I might get up in the morning and I might decide to spend a couple minutes just doing some breath awareness, just being aware of the sensation of the air entering my nose, entering my lungs and filling them, and exiting as they come out. Or I might just decide to do more conscious breathing, of breathing through the nose alone, just to help activate diaphragm and fill the lungs properly. I mean, these techniques have all been scientifically shown to improve our well-being, and they're so simple. You might decide to start moving, and with the moving side of things, you might just do a little bit more movement than you did the day before. You might decide that you'd like to do some stretching, and you just offer yourself a couple stretches, literally just before, just before you brush your teeth, just before or after you eat. Just really simple, small little steps. Thinking, maybe even having a gratitude journal, or even just taking that time in the morning when you have that moment to have me time, which taps into the relaxation of offering some gratitude for something in the last 24 hours that you're grateful for, or reframing things in terms of, well, this is a learning opportunity for me. Okay. When it comes to the nourishment side of things, maybe just having that look at when you go to the shops, having a look at what is on the label. Can I read it? Yeah, don't get it. Right, maybe put that back. Maybe try and eat more ingredients, more foods that are single ingredient as well. Increasing the time spent relaxing, me time, a cup of tea, that moment for you just to connect with you. And then in terms of connection, maybe spending a bit more time in nature, or spending time connecting or talking to somebody within the community. So they don't have to be these huge, big changes. A lot of people, when do a lot of the coaching work, they're like, oh, I've got so much to do. It's small steps that you just build into your everyday living. And for me, I found that that's the most that offers us the most sustainable way to live in a state that's as healthy as we can based on the environment that we're in. So with that, I'm going to come back to stop my screen sharing there, and I'm going to come back to the screen here. And I just want to offer some space out to anybody who could potentially have any questions, any queries, any thoughts. I've gone over quite a bit of stuff there, and obviously quite fast based on the time we have. But if anybody's got any thoughts or questions, please do sing out. Cool. Nobody's got any queries? Nobody wants to pick my brain about anything? No? Awesome. All right, so my name's Neil. My project is called Future Vibrations, and my website's futurevibrations.co.uk. I do everything from pain and stress management work to, actually it's the other side, there we go, sound healing. My primary role is helping people understand their beings better from a mental, from a physical, mental, and a spiritual aspect as well. And I just feel deeply grateful that, big shout outs to Ray, Carolina, and to Joe as well for inviting me to join and share some of this work. It's my absolute pleasure to share some of the learnings that have been passed down to me. And yeah, I hope that it's been of value to you in whichever way, shape, or form. Again, if you'd like to connect, it's just Future Vibrations, Elevating Wellbeing on Facebook, on Instagram, or through my website as well. So yeah, again, thank you, deep gratitude, and thank you to each of you who've sat through this and yeah, and have offered their time. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Neil. I'd just like to open it up if anyone has any questions for you before we close. Does anyone have any questions or comments? You can write them in the chat box.
Cool.
So are you based in Manchester at the minute or London?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm based in Manchester. I've been here now for the last 3 years, and so yeah, it's yeah, love it up here. It's a lot better than when I was living in London. That's for certain.
Yeah, you can definitely get to nature a bit easier here. So many parks and walks for me time.
Yeah. No, it is indeed. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. It's much, well, greatly appreciated. Not muchly appreciated. That's not proper England, is it? I've just had a message there from Claudia. Claudia, thank you so much. It's very much appreciated. And I hope you have a rest of a fantastic festival. I know I'm going to be jumping on some of these classes and some of the talks as well. And yeah, it should be great. And Ray, thank you so much for hosting. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stop the live stream now. Thanks.